Thank you so much for coming back to Littles by Lira. Who's ready to make some back-to-school themed tiered tray decor? To start, we'll make an apple and an apple pencil holder. Now, I've got 3 bottles here. 2 of them were from Wee Yogurt, and the tall one is from a bottle of Kalamata olives. I started by giving them a coat of white primer to get them ready to paint. Once the primer had dried, I grabbed some crimson and lacquer chalk paint by Waverly, mixed them together, and painted one of the jars. I only gave it 1 coat because I liked the mottled effect it had when it dried after the first coat. For the second yogurt container, I took some malachite and celery Waverly paint and mixed those up. Then I gave the other jar a nice coat of that. It was a thick coat, but still, again, only 1. Once dry, I took some Dollar Tree twine, and with a little bit of hot glue, I secured the twine to the top of the red container. I wrapped the twine around it 3 times, snipped it, secured it, and then, as you'll see, I added a little twine shoelace bow. As you can see, I am not a professional bow maker by any stretch of the imagination, so definitely struggled here a little bit, but eventually I got it to the size that I wanted it, that I figured looked nice on the jar. Once I finished it, I just put it on there with some more hot glue. Taking a leftover sprig of Dollar Tree rose leaves, I cut it apart and just hot glued it behind the little twine bow that I made on the red jar. Obviously, this looks like a little red apple to you. After I got the leaves adhered, all that was left was to add a stack of pencils to the jar, and I think it turned out really good. What do you guys think? Now let's get to work on that green apple. I went outside and found a stick in my backyard. Taking my mitre shears, I cut it in half. Again, guys, these are super game changers, especially for cutting dowels and apparently backyard sticks. I figured which half of the stick that I liked the best, and taking some hot glue, I simply adhered it to the top. Well, it was the bottom, but now it's the top of the jar. Since that sprig of roses had 3 leaves, I'm just going to take the 3rd leaf and glue that into place. There we have it, a red and green apple. I hope you like it. Next, we're going to make a pencil flower vase. Do you remember that Kalamata olive jar that we primed? Well, now let's take some maize chalk paint by Waverly and go ahead and give that a nice coat. This one I did 2 coats on. Then I took some Dollar Tree letter stickers, and using a Sharpie marker, I colored in the N, the O, period at the bottom of one of the question marks, and number 2. Once my jar is dry, I'm going to take some painter's tape, and at about 1 inch from the bottom, I'm going to wrap the painter's tape around as levelly as I possibly can. And then taking some ballet slipper from Waverly, I'm going to paint what will be the eraser portion of the vase. Not waiting for it to dry, I go ahead and peel off the painter's tape. I find that if I let it dry all the way, I tend to peel off my newly painted surface, and that is so annoying to me. Once I've got that peeled off, all I'm gonna do is paint the bottom of the jar so that it's, yellow and pink. Taking some aluminum foil, I fold it in half towards the middle. So I guess I fold it into a third, and then I fold the other side towards the middle. and then I repeat the folding process so that the final fold lies down the middle. I hope that makes sense. You can see what I'm doing here. Once all smoothed out and flattened, I take some hot glue and running a bead along where the pink meets the yellow, I'm gonna put the aluminum foil. This is gonna act as the little metal nub at the bottom of a pencil that holds the eraser in. Then, taking some gunmetal gray metallic folk art paint, I'm just going to paint over the top of the aluminum foil, making it a little darker and closer to what, my pencils typically look like. When that is all done, I'll just grab that ballet slipper paint again and do any touch-ups that I may have, caused a need to be touched up while adhering the foil. And that's what I've got. At this point, I decided I wanted to go all the way up to the top of the jar, so I painted it yellow. Next, going for that authenticity that I do so enjoy, I just took the black numbers and, black number and letters and punctuation that I took off of that Dollar Tree sheet, and I'm just spelling out at the bottom NO period 2, number 2, like the pencil. Because this is a flower, I chose bittersweet to be the flower that it shows. This is my first year not buying school supplies. I'm an empty nester, so it is bittersweet. Next, we're going to make a miniature 2D globe. I have one of these wooden circles from the Dollar Tree. I went and cut off the twine that is the hanger for it, and then taking some Dollar Tree spackle, I just filled in the holes and set those aside to let them dry. I also first I printed a picture of a globe off of the internet from a free Google image search, and then just cut the globe out. I believe it was 4 inches across when all was said and done. Just go ahead and cut it off, or cut the circle of the globe out as close to the globe as you can get it. You don't really want a white edge on this part. Currently, my Mod Podge is hiding from me, so I took some Elmer's school glue and just gave a good coating of it onto the wood circle once the spackle had dried, and I sanded it off. Sorry I didn't show you the sanding, but I figure that's a pretty basic thing that you can figure out. As I said, I coated the circle front and then placed the globe down and tried to get it as centered as I could, smushing down the sides to make sure it's adhered thoroughly. Once I got the sides all smushed down, I put some more glue over the top, and starting from the inside and going to the outside with my paintbrush, I smeared the Elmer's glue to give it a nice coat without smearing the ink from the printer much. As you can see here, it did kind of turn a little pink on some portions, but don't worry, we'll get that taken care of, I promise. I flattened it down with my fingers the rest of the way and set it aside to dry. When it was dry, I took my antique wax, again from Waverly, on a paper towel and just wiped it all over the front of the globe image. This gives it such a pretty antique look. I love it. Then, when I got that all done, I did the sides and I did the back. Okay, so now we're gonna make a faux book stack. Recently, my house was flooded and I lost all my books, so the idea of destroying a book it breaks my heart, so we're gonna make them. I took some pieces of foam core board and cut 6 of them into about the same size. I would say they were about 6 inches by 4 inches. Once all 6 were cut out, I went and took some large popsicle sticks and hot glued them down the side of each of 3 of the boards. This is going to make the spine and be the faux pages. You won't really see the top or the sides when this is all said and done, so it'll be okay that we don't paint them out to make them look like paper pages. So as I was saying, here you see I just took the hot glue, glued it down to one side, and now I'm gluing the other side. Once I have them glued to my liking, I just repeat the process on the other side of the book, and I go through and I do all 3. Next, I just trimmed down 3 more popsicle sticks to become the top of my books, like the top paper part. Hot glue that into place, and we're ready to go. I don't know if kids still do it, but I totally did when I was in high school. I took some brown craft paper, and here you see that I am measuring out about 1 inch on either side of the top, bottom, and left of the book. Then I flip the book over and including the spine, get that width, plus the book flipped over, and draw a line from 1 inch out from that on the other side so that I have a large rectangle that I can fold the paper in all the way around the book and cover it. Make sure to measure your book often while you're doing this so that the paper lines up as evenly as possible with the top and bottom, and if it were a real book, the opening sides. And once it's all folded down nice and neat, hot glue it into place. Obviously, in high school, I never hot glued my book covers into place, but, for reality's sake, let's just say, sure. Is reality even a word? You know what, I'm gonna say it is now. And finally, I just grab a few different big flare pens and write math, science, and history. 2 of those subjects I did not do very well in. 1 I did. I'll let you try and figure it out after watching some of my videos. When I have all the books completed, I stack them up and grab a bit more of the Dollar Tree twine, wrap it around the books a few times, tie a bow, and call this craft done. Our final DIY is going to be what I think is an absolutely adorable slate. I have a sign left over from the back of a Dollar Tree shadow box. I used the box portions on something else, and I'm just taking the sign now and giving it a thick layer of, well, Waverly chalk paint in the color ink. Then, taking those same letters that we used for the pencil, I'm just going to paint some of them white using Waverly white chalk paint. Set them aside and let them dry. Then, grabbing some popsicle sticks, I'm going to measure out the top of the slate and the bottom of the slate and cut the popsicle sticks down to size. Once cut down to size, I just hot glue them into place. The hot glue seems to bond fairly well with the paint, so I'm not worried about it popping off. I did the top, and then I did the bottom. Once those were complete, I measured out for the sides, checked the measurement before I glued them into place, and when it was where I wanted it to be, well, I glued it into place. Taking my antique Waverly wax, I went ahead and stained the top, bottom, and sides of the slate. I don't show it here, but I just used a paper towel to wipe off the excess once I had a nice thick coat of the antiquing wax across the top. Then I took a piece of chalk and, well, I guess seasoned would be a correct word, seasoned the slate. It's not chalk paint, but it gives the effect of a well-worn chalkboard. I used the side of the chalk and colored one side, turned the slate around to the side, and went in the opposite direction. Then taking a dry paper towel, I wiped off all of the chalk so that it made like a smooth gray. Then taking a wet paper towel, well, damp, I just wiped off the excess chalk. You can see as it dries, it gives the appearance of a used chalkboard. I peeled off those stickers from the Dollar Tree sticker sheet, and I'm just placing them on the chalkboard. Oh, here's where I could have taken some of that craft paper and just papered across the back, but I chose to use hazelnut Waverly chalk paint and gave the back a nice thick coat. When the hazelnut chalk paint finally dried, I grabbed some more of that Dollar Tree twine and cut off about 6 inches and made a loop and tied the bottom with a simple overhand knot. Then I flipped the chalkboard over so that the back was facing up, placed a dollop of hot glue, and stuck the knot into the hot glue. Then I covered over the top of the twine with some more hot glue to make sure that it's not going anywhere. The sign can now hang if I so desire. I have some of this gingham black and white checked ribbon from the Dollar Tree. As before mentioned, I am not a bow master, so I will not make you sit here and watch me fuss and fight until I can get the bow where I liked it. When I got it to what I wanted it to look like, I dovetailed the ends and adhered it to the center of the chalkboard using hot glue. Later, I went back in with a red button just to kind of tie in all of my colors. You know, red, apple, skull. It works for me. What do you guys think? I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial, and if you did, please stick around by hitting that subscribe button. Like, comment, share if you want. Have a good one.